Soldiers from the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade mount their Bradley vehicles and set off for a critical mission. As the armored vehicle moves toward enemy positions, an unexploded shell briefly becomes lodged under the tracks.
They handled it easily. The crew only felt a light jolt.
The crew barely notices it. The Bradley absorbs the impact and only a slight jolt passes through the cabin. Through the gunner's optical sight, a Russian BTR-82 comes into view, charging straight toward the Ukrainian Bradley. Without hesitation, the crew opens fire with overwhelming force. The enemy vehicle is shredded like a thin sheet of metal. The BTR tries to return fire, but its weapon systems appear damaged and the crew fires blindly. It's obvious from the commander's voice that the vehicle is barely functioning. Watch as one of the infantrymen jumps off the moving Bradley. The Russian armored personnel carrier is disabled. The enemy troops are lucky to escape just in time, evacuating the vehicle before it bursts into flames. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian team draws closer to its objective. The Bradley provides suppressive fire while the Russian forces reel from the sudden assault. The men of the 3rd Brigade are fully prepared for combat. The Russians are still present in the area, and most of the fighting in Miusart, especially in the forest, happens without a clear visual on the enemy. A part of the squad breaks off and pushes toward trenches that were earlier recaptured from Russian troops. The objective is secured, and the area is now under control. But there is no time to relax. Suddenly, 2 Russian armored personnel carriers packed with soldiers appear. Another APC arrives to reinforce the enemy and begins firing in an attempt to retake the position. Precise shots immediately disable the first vehicle, forcing the infantry to scatter. One of the Bradleys launches 2 missiles in quick succession, and then fires another one. The enemy counterattack collapses, panic spreads, and Russian troops flee from their burning vehicles. The Bradley crews have done their job flawlessly. Fighter aircraft now move in to clear the area.
Granata! Чисто! Граната! Работай! Давай! Давай, выходи! Чисто! Яр, пусты, Яр! Гранат! Да работай, блядь!
Russians remain in this sector, hiding in the trenches.
Russian troops sheltering in nearby trenches are targeted with grenade launchers. Bullets fly from all directions. Under tightening pressure, the Russians withdraw. A recon team confirms that holding the position is no longer possible for them. As a last resort, the enemy deploys its frontline aviation. Su-25 jets are prepped for takeoff, armed with rockets and guided missiles. It's their final chance to halt the Ukrainian advance. As they approach the target area, Russian pilots release flares, hoping to avoid Ukrainian air defense. Flying at extremely low altitude, they drop their entire payload over the designated area before retreating back to base. Rockets explode only meters away from Ukrainian units. The blast wave throws several soldiers to the ground, though only with minor shock.
We were attacked by aircraft. Over. We're passing the information to the air defense unit in your sector.
Дай руку, кавун!
Ай, братан, ты шо, куда собрался? Ай!
Запиши, сюда!
The Su-25s attempt to return by an alternate route to avoid detection, but the Ukrainians are already a step ahead. Air defense operators quickly calculate firing solutions. There's no room for error. Target confirmed. The missile launches. Moments later, confirmation comes. One Su-25 has been taken down. The burning aircraft streaks across the sky like a fiery meteor. Amazingly, the pilot manages to eject at the last moment. Surviving such a fall is pure luck. He will soon be evacuated. The mission has failed. Russia has lost an aircraft and failed to achieve its objective. Ukrainian units continue their advance.
Що сказав?
Уёбывай! Надо быстрее идти, пока...
Уйобуй, догоним, ров! Цыган, по низце работаю! Шахтарь! Шахтарь, ляж, ляж! Іду! Крийте!
In the area, a small number of Russian soldiers still refuse to surrender.
Сука! Це наша? Граната була наша?
The objective is secured. The position is now firmly under Ukrainian control.
Да!
The Bradley vehicles move toward the extraction point. These fighters, many of them from Azov, belong to the most elite units of the Ukrainian armed forces. The operation has been completed without personnel losses, and the brigade begins regrouping. At the same time, Ukrainian reconnaissance drones scan the broader zone and detect a large Russian artillery unit several kilometers from the newly seized positions. Two I-36 152mm towed howitzers, capable of delivering devastating fire and threatening the freshly recaptured area, are positioned there. The Ukrainian command opts for an unexpected tactic, deploying a flamethrower drone loaded with a thermite compound. This substance, notorious for being virtually impossible to extinguish, is considered one of the most destructive incendiary weapons, alongside napalm and white phosphorus. Due to thermite's intense burning capability, it can obliterate bunkers, entrenched firing positions, and even armored equipment. Watch as the drone sprays its lethal mix over the enemy positions hidden in the tree line. There is no escape. Flames engulf the area and secondary explosions begin as the ammunition cooks off. The blast is captured on camera by a Russian soldier fleeing the battery. The artillery threat is neutralized, target destroyed. The Ukrainian reconnaissance teams return to base. By morning, Russian troops revisit the area to assess the damage. What they see is utter destruction, trucks and howitzers reduced to ashes. It's becoming increasingly clear that thermite-equipped flamethrower drones may well become a game-changer in this war. Over the past several months, the armed forces of Ukraine have steadily intensified the operational pressure on Russian troops through a carefully coordinated combination of offensive actions, reconnaissance missions, and deliberate attacks on critical supply routes. Rather than relying on a single breakthrough, the Ukrainian command has focused on a series of complex operations across multiple fronts, forcing the Russian military to constantly react and disperse its already stretched resources. Ukrainian assault brigades continue to carry out precision strikes in strategic regions such as the Donetsk, Luhansk, and Zaporizhzhia axes. In particular, Ukrainian forces have launched pinning attacks in the south to disrupt Russian defensive lines while simultaneously expanding their zones of control in the east. These operations are not aimed at rapid territorial gain, but at exhausting the Russian defense system, reducing its mobility and gradually degrading its ability to reinforce threatened sectors. One of the key pillars of Ukraine's current success lies in its ability to disrupt the enemy's logistics. Field reconnaissance units and drone operators continuously monitor supply roads and ammunition depots, seeking targets of opportunity. Despite the enemy's efforts to conceal convoys and use alternate routes, Ukrainian FPV drones strike at fuel trucks, command vehicles, and resupply columns with increasing effectiveness. Every destroyed truck, every intercepted delivery delays the deployment of Russian reserves and weakens their ability to resist subsequent attacks. Equally important is the way Ukrainian forces are exploiting the geography. In forested and semi-urban areas, small units move silently and strike with speed. Avoiding open terrain where Russian artillery might have the advantage, combined arms platoons launch assaults from tree lines, engage the enemy at close range, and quickly pull back before return fire can be organized. These tactics, used across several sectors, create a sense of permanent instability within the Russian lines. Positions that seemed secure one day become vulnerable the next. The use of unmanned aerial systems has dramatically shifted the tactical balance. Reconnaissance drones orbit continuously over Russian forward positions, identifying artillery batteries, mortar teams, and hidden armored vehicles. Once identified, Ukrainian artillery is able to deliver highly accurate fire within minutes. Conversely, Ukrainian anti-drone teams are targeting Russian UAVs to disrupt their situational awareness. The resulting imbalance in intelligence gathering gives Ukrainian units a significant edge in planning and executing their movements. Particularly noteworthy are the efforts to neutralize Russian long-range firepower. Ukrainian counter-battery radar and gun crews coordinate closely to detect and destroy enemy howitzers before they can inflict serious damage. Several large-caliber Russian artillery pieces were recently located near Svatove and destroyed by Excalibur and M982 precision-guided rounds. These interdictions are essential. Without sustained artillery support, Russian infantry remains exposed and must rely on underprotected armored vehicles that are themselves vulnerable to anti-tank teams. Strategic communications nodes are also being targeted. In the past weeks, a number of Russian command posts, electronic warfare centers, and field headquarters have been hit with long-range missiles and HIMARS rockets. These strikes disrupt Russian coordination and force commanders to relocate, often under chaotic conditions. Meanwhile, Ukrainian special forces continue deep penetration operations to sabotage ammunition depots far behind the front lines, frequently detonating warehouses containing thousands of shells and rockets. Even at sea, pressure continues to grow. In the Black Sea region, Ukrainian naval drones have successfully struck several Russian reconnaissance ships and support vessels. These actions restrict the Russian fleet's freedom of maneuver and increase the cost of operating close to the Ukrainian coastline. Every vessel forced back towards Sevastopol represents reduced intelligence coverage and fewer cruise missile launch platforms available for strikes against Ukrainian territory. Morale plays another crucial role in the broader picture. Ukrainian forces have maintained high cohesion and motivation, driven by a clear understanding of the strategic objective, the liberation of their territory. In contrast, intercepted communications and drone footage show Russian troops hesitating, arguing over orders, and occasionally abandoning positions after limited contact. This growing psychological advantage is amplified by the constant tempo of Ukrainian strikes and the visible destruction of high-value Russian assets. Another dimension of Ukraine's approach involves the gradual establishment of layered air defense systems. Russian aircraft attempting to launch glide bombs or unguided rockets are increasingly forced to operate at low altitudes and at the extreme limits of their range. That creates opportunities for Ukrainian air defense units, who have already downed several Su-25s, Su-34s, and attack helicopters over the past month. Each loss further limits Russia's ability to provide close air support to ground troops. With Russian supply depots dwindling and reinforcement transfers delayed by Ukrainian sabotage missions, some sectors of the front are now critically under-resourced. Ukrainian forces take advantage of these gaps by launching surprise local assaults backed by mobile artillery and drone swarms. Even small gains in these circumstances are significant. They create staging areas for future operations and force Russia to pull units from relatively quiet sectors to reinforce threatened areas. The coming weeks are expected to bring further intensification of Ukrainian activity. Additional long-range systems are being deployed to engage critical infrastructure in Crimea and along the occupied southern coastline. Ukrainian engineers have already improved many of the frontline supply roads, allowing faster transportation of ammunition, armored vehicles, and medical support. Continuous rotation of assault groups ensures that combat fatigue does not diminish operational effectiveness. Meanwhile, Western-supplied air defense missiles and counter-battery systems are being integrated into Ukrainian plans, providing additional protection and offensive options. New drone types with longer range and higher payload capacity give Ukraine the ability to strike enemy positions previously considered out of reach. In short, the Ukrainian strategy is not based on a single decisive push, but on steady, methodical attrition, combining pressure on logistics, targeted strikes against command structures, rapid local offensives, and constant aerial surveillance. Day by day, position by position, Russian troops are being pushed into a defensive posture for which neither their supply lines nor their morale are adequately prepared. Should this tempo be maintained, it is highly likely that additional strategic sectors will fall under Ukrainian control, opening the way for broader operational breakthroughs. The systematic destruction of artillery, disruption of rear area logistics, and successful counter-air operations have already begun to shift the momentum. What we are witnessing is not just a series of isolated engagements, but the gradual collapse of the enemy's capability to coordinate, supply, and sustain its frontline units.